Urgent. Europe is preparing a nuclear fist. An atomic bomb in Germany. The European Union is armed to the teeth. Putin has gone too far. The red button has been pressed. Macron has pulled out the nuclear probe. America is far away, but Russian tanks are close. Berlin is changing its doctrine. The Kremlin is in shock. Instead of fear, they got a nuclear monster at their borders. Now there is a military clan. A powerful package of sanctions. Russian oil is finished. How the Union is preparing for a possible Russian attack, we'll tell you right now. Watch until the end. My respects, this is Ukraine Today. I am Andrei Silakov, bringing you the hottest news. Russia has spent so long scaring the West with its nuclear arsenal that Europe has decided to get its own. Joschka Fischer, the icon of the German Greens, a man who has spent his whole life advocating for peace and the environment, is now demanding nuclear rearmament for Europe. Fischer said it outright: the illusion of eternal peace has collapsed. For too long, we have lived under the illusion of supposed eternal peace in Europe. These shortcomings now need to be addressed through rapid and comprehensive rearmament. The conclusion is harsh. Europe needs its own nuclear fist. And not just talk, but real action. German experts have already done the calculations. Technically speaking, Germany is capable of creating an atomic bomb in just 3 years. 3 years and Berlin will have something to respond to Moscow's blackmail with. Technically, Germany will apparently be ready faster than many think. Chemist Rainer Moormann, 75, who spent more than 3 decades researching nuclear technologies at the Jülich Research Center, says, Germany will be able to create an atomic bomb within 3 years. But the Germans will not act alone. Emmanuel Macron steps in with his support. The President of France makes an important statement. Paris is ready to deploy its nuclear capabilities to protect all European partners. French warheads, submarines, and fighter jets become a shield for the entire continent. This is the end of the era of a defenseless Europe. Our nuclear deterrent capability protects us. It is comprehensive, sovereign, and entirely French. But in response to the historic appeal of the future Chancellor of Germany, I have decided to initiate a strategic discussion about protecting our allies on the European continent through our nuclear deterrence. This is Putin's strategic failure. He wanted to divide the West, to intimidate, but achieved exactly the opposite. He united Europe and forced it to turn into a military camp with a nuclear club. Europeans have realized that disarmament is the path to slavery. Only strength, only deterrence, only a tough response will do. I know that you are justifiably concerned about the current events that are undermining the world order. Russia has become a threat to France and Europe. But it would be absolute madness to simply remain standing idly aside and do nothing. The nuclear issue is a matter of existence, as they say in Germany. And if the Kremlin thought it could brandish its nuclear club with impunity, now it will get a mirrored response, right at its own borders. Europe is taking off its mask and putting on a bulletproof vest. At a closed meeting in the European Parliament, Ursula von der Leyen made a bold statement.
We know that we need to be strong, and strength implies just that. We are not a military power yet, but we are making plans to become one.
The European Union is officially setting a course to create its own powerful military machine. We're talking about a program worth up to 800 billion euros. Almost $1 trillion to supply Europe with guns, tanks, and missiles. The joint procurement program has already brought together 19 countries. The EU has realized that being just an economic giant in the world, in a world of predators, means being prey.
There are many assumptions about what should be done, what can be done, what might be done. But
for now, the European Union has prepared a cake with arsenic for the Kremlin by February 24th. The 20th anniversary package of sanctions. And this won't just be another document, but a point-blank shot to the head of the Russian economy. Kaja Kallas, our ironclad ally. In Brussels, she confirmed the goal to approve the package precisely by the anniversary of the invasion. The symbolism is off the charts. On the day when Putin wanted to take Kyiv in 3 days, he will receive an economic knockout.
As for the 20th package of sanctions, we are aiming to roll it out on February 24th. EU member states are proposing various sanctions, including a complete ban on maritime services, as well as issues related to energy sanctions and mineral fertilizers.
The main target is the Kremlin's infamous shadow fleet. France is demanding especially tough action here, literally to sink these ships in the ports. The plan is a complete ban on any maritime services. If a ship is carrying Russian oil to EU ports, it will be denied entry. Servicing is prohibited, insurance is revoked. In effect, this is a maritime blockade.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine today. Join us now.
But it doesn't stop with oil. Europe continues to hit where it hurts. Now it's fertilizer. This used to be Russia's third largest source of income. The key word here is used to be. Plus, there's now a total ban on luxury goods. It doesn't matter how much it costs. Russians must forget about European quality. Let them get used to domestic products now. Quilted jackets instead of brands, birch bark instead of leather, and the sweetest part, the fight against sanction evasion. In Brussels, they finally understood. It's not enough to just ban Russia. You have to crack down on those who help them. The 20th sanctions package is expected to include Chinese companies. This is a direct signal to Beijing. The games are over. Either you follow the rules or you get kicked out of the market along with the Russians. Financial loopholes are also being completely sealed off. As part of the effort to combat the circumvention of existing sanctions, the new package will focus on putting an end to such practices in the financial sector. Kaja Kallas speaks frankly. The discussions are heated, countries are bargaining, but the mood is combative. On February 24th, Russia should feel the full force of European anger. The noose is tightening slowly but surely. And when this package comes into force, the Russian economy will simply have nothing left to breathe. The year is 2027, and Ukraine is officially in the European Union. Vucic has revealed the main intrigue of the war's finale. Peace will only come when Kiev receives its EU membership card. For Putin, this is political death and the complete collapse of all his ambitions. On deterring the West, there is already an outcry in the Kremlin. They started the war to keep us out of Europe, but in the end, they themselves handed us the ticket, a pass to Brussels. How are we finally breaking free from the clutches of the pseudo-empire and taking our rightful place at the European table? Find out in the report.
In 2027, Ukraine will become a member of the European Union. Serbian President Aleksandar Vucic made an unexpected statement. According to him, Ukraine's accelerated accession to the European Union is part of a possible peace plan between Kiev and Moscow.
I'm telling you what I've heard somewhere, and I wouldn't be saying this if it weren't true. So I found out that part of the plan is a peace plan if Russia and Ukraine reach it, because not only will both sides be obligated to fulfill it, but also a significant part of the international community. One part of the plan is for Ukraine to become a member of the European Union.
We're talking about an unprecedentedly fast scenario of European integration with Ukraine joining the EU as early as January 1st, 2027.
These are absolutely unrealistic timeframes. Absolutely. There are no such plans in the European Union. It's also important to keep in mind that it's far from certain that an agreement to end the war between Russia and Ukraine will be reached by 2026.
Moreover, talk of Ukraine's accelerated accession to the EU is most likely just part of a deliberate fake information and political campaign by the Kremlin's friends. In particular, Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban is using this topic ahead of the elections.
This is a classic example of his underhanded and incredibly dirty political electioneering tactics. To scare Hungarians with the idea that Ukraine will supposedly be fast-tracked into the European Union and that all the benefits, preferences and subsidies, the agricultural subsidies of the European Union will go only to Ukraine. Why is the president of Serbia, who has a special relationship with Russia, just like Orban, repeating this? Because Serbia also wants to join the European Union, but it doesn't want to play by European rules.
But what is actually realistic for 2027 is Ukraine's readiness to join the European Union. According to President Volodymyr Zelensky, it is important for Kiev to secure a specific date for joining the EU directly in the agreement to end the war. He says this will provide clear security guarantees and help avoid the possible blocking of membership.
One of the security guarantees for Ukraine is membership in the European Union. And that's exactly why we always say, the year 27. Guittaro says by the year 30.
As of today, 2030 is a more realistic date. The European Commission emphasizes that despite the war, Ukraine is showing significant progress. The European Commissioner for Enlargement, Marta Kos, previously stated that Kiev is actively implementing reforms and should become an EU member as soon as possible, provided all necessary conditions are met. This position is also confirmed by European Commission representative Guillaume Mercier. According to him, Ukraine has already completed the legislative screening, is making progress in key areas, and has adopted important roadmaps, from the rule of law to public administration reform and the protection of minority rights.
We need to go through all the procedures. For example, Hungary even blocked the opening of the first clusters. But still, the negotiations have started, substantive negotiations, and after that, it will just be a matter of formalizing things legally, the opening and closing of these clusters. There are in total 3.5 dozen of these negotiation topics. This also takes time, usually 2 to 3 years. Then comes the political decision of the European Union in agreement with the European Commission and the European Council, followed by ratification by each EU country. As for Russia's position, Russia is categorically opposed to Ukraine's membership in NATO. But now, official Russian representatives are showing, let's say, some flexibility here.
For Ukraine, EU membership is not only a step toward economic development, but also a symbol of a definitive break with its Soviet past. And under the current conditions of war, as an indirect guarantee of security. Yes?
The European Union is not a military political bloc, it's not a military alliance, but nevertheless, it is a political union. If Russia attacks Ukraine, the European Union is already helping us now. At the moment, it is our main partner providing us with economic, financial, and military support. And if we become a part of it, then all the more so. The majority of EU countries are also members of NATO. This is a risk, not a direct one, but an indirect one for Russia, as it would mean risking a conflict with NATO. Secondly, Ukraine's membership in the European Union, as shown by the experience of many Eastern and Central European countries, especially Poland, means that a country joining the EU receives significant economic benefits.
Ukraine continues to demonstrate its readiness for accelerated European integration, but the key decision now lies with Europe. Will the entire Union be able to agree on a specific date for membership? Today, there are countries that traditionally block the process. Hungary and Slovakia. They hold the keys to accelerated European integration. But the political map of Europe is not static. By 2030, elections will be held in these countries. Parliamentary seats may change hands, and with them, the positions of the blocking forces may shift as well.
Meanwhile, Paris is preparing a powerful airstrike against the Kremlin's ambitions. Ukraine will receive even more fighter jets, Mirage 2005. French Predators are already warming up their engines to clear our skies of Russian junk. But the planes are just the appetizer. What else has Macron prepared, and how soon will it become a nightmare for the occupiers? Find out right now.
Ukraine and France are strengthening their military cooperation. Ukraine's Minister of Defense Mikhailo Fedorov discussed strengthening air defense with his French counterpart Catherine Vautrin. Deliveries of Mirage 2005 fighter jets and missiles. Ukraine can count on France for protection against Russian aggression and for achieving a just and lasting peace. To create reliable security guarantees, she wrote on the social network X after the conversation ended.
Still, we have to understand that every country has its own interests. And in this case, I think that France, both because of the situation in the Sahel region and because of the risks to the European Union, and France, no matter what, is one of the two leaders of the European Union, along with Germany, so the threats and risks that Russia poses to the EU are significant. These threats are not going anywhere. So I think that despite France's ongoing attempts to establish a dialogue with Russia, which we constantly see, the basis for these attempts is not some kind of sympathy for Russia, but rather an effort to appear as a player on the global political stage.
It has also been announced that France will supply additional domestically produced missiles and fighter jets. This will happen in the near future.
First and foremost, it should be understood that over the 4 years of the full-scale war, France has repeatedly tried to be the most active player in supporting Ukraine. And it has proposed ideas that were significantly different from those put forward by the United States of America. Under the previous administration and the United Kingdom, which also at times was a leader in supporting Ukraine.
Defense Minister Fedorov thanked the French side for many years of consistent cooperation and significant contribution to the development of Ukraine's air defense and aviation capabilities. According to him, this partnership is already working to protect Ukrainian skies.
So, France wants to demonstrate in practice that Europe is capable of a lot without the US. And since they need something to showcase this with, they've decided it will be Ukraine, specifically military aid to Ukraine. That is, right now, when everyone thinks that without the US, Ukraine might not be able to withstand the war, France is saying, well, we'll replace the US. You think it's impossible, but we think it's possible.
At the moment, the French can strengthen the Ukrainians with air defense systems and counter new technological threats.
Therefore, I think this demonstrative desire to show the United States of America that issues can be resolved even without them is driving the kind of developments we're seeing in France.
In addition, Ukraine and France discussed the issue of countering the Russian shadow fleet. The Ukrainian Minister of Defense invited his French counterpart to visit Kyiv.
While Ukraine is strengthening its relationships with partners, Russia is losing all its allies. The total collapse of Putin's diplomacy. Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Turkey, and even the eternal friend China have all shown the Kremlin the door. The myth of Russia's loyal friends has crumbled to dust. Asian leaders are firmly blocking any influence from the Russian Federation. How did Putin end up left with nothing in proud solitude? Stay tuned to find out.
The long-standing friendship is falling apart at the seams. As Bloomberg reports, the Kremlin's longtime allies in Central Asia and the Caucasus are building ties with China, the European Union, Turkey, and the Gulf countries, seeking to protect themselves from further aggression by Moscow. They are trying to minimize risks and are looking for ways to distance themselves as much as possible from Russia.
Asian countries are reassessing Russia's role in the modern world and their own relationships with Russia.
The lesson that Central Asian countries have drawn from the full-scale invasion is that Russia is committed to its strategic goals, no matter the cost. Kate Mallinson, partner at Prism Strategic Intelligence Limited. In London,
another diplomatic failure has been added to Russia's list, the deterioration of relations with Kazakhstan. Even though Putin is loudly proclaiming a great friendship from every possible platform. For Russia, Kazakhstan is also one of its largest trading partners within the Commonwealth of Independent States and the Eurasian region. Overall, Kazakhstan has long been demonstrating a cautious yet confident distancing from Moscow. It refuses to support the war against Ukraine, does not recognize the annexation of Ukrainian territories, conducts exercises with Nato, and is developing transport corridors bypassing Russia, including through the Caspian and Turkey. Tokayev openly states Kazakhstan's principled position directly to Putin's face.
Our official position is that we do not recognize the independence of Taiwan, and we also do not recognize Kosovo, nor South Ossetia, nor the territory of Abkhazia, and quite apparently, this fundamental diplomatic principle will continue to be strictly applied to the so-called state territories, which in our view, are currently defined as including the regions of Luhansk and Donetsk.
Against this backdrop, Russia resorted to energy blackmail. Moscow effectively blocked the export of Kazakh oil. On July 22, 2025, Russia unexpectedly imposed restrictions on the export of Kazakh oil through Novorossiysk. This is the key route for exporting oil from Kazakhstan. The official reason cited was environmental concerns and technical issues. But in reality, this is a political signal. Astana has gone too far in pursuing an independent foreign policy. Against this backdrop, the energy blackmail looks like a desperate attempt to regain lost influence. However, the effect is likely to be the opposite. Kazakhstan will accelerate its integration with alternative economic blocs, building closer cooperation with China, Turkey, and the West.
Yes, within the framework of the Eurasian Economic Union, we do have disagreements since we meet not only in open sessions, but sometimes in closed ones as well.
My colleague said that there are sometimes disagreements, not that we always have disagreements. In the closed sessions, we always argue.
But that's not all. Last year, Russia began demanding that owners of cars assembled in Kazakhstan and imported in 2024 to 2025 pay an additional recycling fee, a fee with increased coefficients. Kazakhstan is preparing tough retaliatory measures against the Russian automotive industry. The authorities of the Republic are proposing to sharply increase the recycling fee on cars imported from Russia and Belarus by as much as 40 times. In this way, Astana has taken steps to weaken economic ties with Moscow. Additionally, this week, the president of Kazakhstan, Tokayev, effectively accused Russia of fraud in financial operations. According to him, last year about $14 billion were transferred from a neighboring country through a Kazakh bank to other countries. Tokayev noted that from the standpoint of law, economics, and even politics, this is an outrageous fact. The president of Kazakhstan did not specify which country he was referring to. The Moscow Times writes that in his speech, Tokayev was clearly hinting at the aggressor country, Russia. In addition to Kazakhstan, Russia is losing another ally. Uzbekistan is also distancing itself from the Kremlin. The Kremlin launched a large-scale campaign against migrants, and Tashkent responded harshly. Uzbekistan's Ministry of Foreign Affairs claims there were human rights violations during a raid by Russian security forces in Moscow on June 25th, and it is demanding an investigation into the deaths of its citizens. Tashkent insists on the protection of the rights of Uzbek citizens working in Russia, despite the tightening of Russia's migration laws. As expected, Uzbekistan is pursuing a multi-vector foreign policy, distancing itself from Russia's direct influence in the political sphere.
That is, for a long time there was still a sense of Russia as the successor state. The Soviet Union, a major world power, one way or another influenced, for example, the Asian countries that were previously within Russia's sphere of influence. And as for those countries that were not in Russia's orbit of influence, nevertheless, they still regarded Russia as a rather significant global player.
Against the backdrop of Russia's rapid withdrawal from the post-Soviet South, other forces are taking its place. First and foremost, Turkey and China. Turkey already de facto dominates in Azerbaijan, is strengthening its influence in Armenia, and is actively working with Kazakhstan.
Probably among the Asian countries, Turkey was the first to challenge Russia. We remember the incident with the downing of the Russian plane. But overall, Turkey has long positioned itself as a global player, essentially on par with Russia. They are quite comparable to Russia, and Turkey does not behave as a junior partner to Russia. But lately, we have been witnessing how Asian countries are no longer seeing Russia as a serious threat.
China, in turn, is deepening its economic and logistical cooperation with Kazakhstan and other Central Asian countries. Beijing is seen as a more predictable and economically beneficial partner than Moscow.
Asian countries are now reorienting themselves toward new centers of power. First and foremost, of course, China, but Turkey is also not wasting any time. And it is expanding its influence in the Turkic world, which in fact encompasses not only Central Asia, but also a significant part of the modern world.
After the full-scale invasion of Ukraine and the subsequent severing of Moscow's economic ties with the West, China became Russia's main partner. In recent years, trade between the two countries has been growing at an impressive pace. However, in 2025, growth suddenly gave way to decline, showing that the friendship without limits spoken of by Moscow and Beijing does, in fact, have its boundaries. Deutsche Welle reports that in 2025, the volume of Russian-Chinese trade decreased for the first time in the past 5 years, by as much as 7%, down to approximately $228 billion. Turkish drones, Chinese investments, Western diplomatic missions, and regional alliances without Russia are replacing the Russian world.
In the case of Asian countries, things are much more complicated than, for example, with European countries. And diplomacy there is built on somewhat different principles. That is, I think that the leaders of many Asian countries will continue to show formal respect to the Russian leadership for quite some time. But at the same time, it is clear that the perception of Russia itself has changed dramatically, and now no one perceives Russia anymore as some kind of ultimate player in Eurasia who will dictate its terms to everyone in the region.
The dictator of Russia has to pay for the loss of influence over its allies, and with its reputation. Putin is losing the very geopolitical game that he himself imposed.
This particular phenomenon has left a truly profound and lasting impression on the entire world as we know it today.